I'm a fan of fantasy, so I listen to Easy and Alan on their Just a Fantasy Fan podcast. During the show, you can live chat with Easy and Alan at LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. Rumour has it, Lenny only swings one way, with Launch Angle. Now here's Easy and Chris Allen.
And welcome to another Wednesday night. About 9:30. We're getting pretty good almost at keeping our time.
Yeah, we're on time.
Yeah, we're on time. We're on time. And we chatted actually a little bit before.
Yeah.
But welcome to the Legend Sports Network at LennyMelnickFantasySports.com, where you can come join us in the chat room. Chat room's been a little slow this week. It's a baseball chat room, but we're building a lot of football audience out there. And obviously this is a little slow time for baseball. The World Series ended. I don't know that did we talk since the World Series?
Yeah, we talked about it. Yeah, we talked about it.
So we already went there. So the baseball's, the chat room's been a tad on the low side. So anybody out there listening to us, we're live on YouTube or LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. There's a link there. You can watch us there and join the chat room. Sign up. It's free. I am joined by my co-host every Wednesday night on a Fantasy Fan Sportscast, Chris Allen from FF Couch Coach and 4for4. And my weatherman, how's it going tonight?
Not too bad. I think this past week we actually had beautiful weather across the country for our Week 9 games. So I'm actually quite happy about that. Less work I had to worry about. So other than that,
in Florida, we had the weather wasn't during the game. It was the concern at the end of the game the night before.
Mm-hmm. Right, because I heard there were some concerns for the college games.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And I watched some of that, and obviously, the running backs, I mean, there was a lot of falling down. There was a lot of, the field they said was just falling apart. So, I'm not saying it was a weather issue other than weather affected the field the night before. Mm-hmm. So, and that game was strange. Was it all field goals or was it one defensive touchdown? I don't think there was an offensive touchdown. Let's go that route.
I don't think so, if I'm remembering correctly.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't. I'm pretty sure it was just all field goals and maybe a defensive score. It's one of those where both defenses, if you had either defense, was pretty productive for fantasy. Last week there was, I think, like 3 different defenses that scored. Defensive scoring is kind of crazy to say in fantasy because everybody sets it up a little different. Mm-hmm. But let's just put it, there was a couple of defenses last week. I know the Bears went off. Miami and the Jets both did pretty good. Where they could have they made a difference, in your fantasy league if you had those defenses. So that was pretty exciting. I didn't have a lot of time to do much about any other sports this week because, like I said, I've had one of those weeks and I still haven't got caught up. I had this talk last night on the round table. I'm a big election guy, and I'm not a political person. I just cannot get enough of the election day stuff, the news, the thing. And I enjoy. Me and my kids went and voted early in the morning. We do participate in it. I think
absolutely you should. Everybody should.
I think it's very important to do. But, and again, I said it last night. I get hooked on that a little bit because growing up as a kid when we only had a couple of channels to watch, trust me, on election day, every channel covered elections. So you didn't watch TV on election day in the 70s without watching, the election stuff. That's what me and Dad and Mom somewhat, you just watched it. It was fascinating to me. And I stayed up till almost 2:00 last night watching election results.
Wow, you stayed up late.
Yeah. So, it was pretty exciting. Real AA in the chat room voted for Prop 8. I don't know what Prop 8. I think you're in Florida. So I know here and only because I've been involved with AA a few times on my other fan cast, and I know here in Ohio that the penalty for drug use got denied. That they're not going to let people out early or change any of the penalties for that. That didn't make it, but I do think Dayton passed their marijuana legality law, or I'm not sure exactly. It was law. It wasn't something I could vote on. It was just Montgomery County, Dayton.
Okay.
But I think that did pass. So I know that was because in the state of Ohio, we have the medical marijuana now.
Mm-hmm.
But some cities aren't allowing it because of their individual laws. And I think that was what Dayton was, if I'm not mistaken. Again, I didn't study that because it's something I didn't have to vote on. But I know that did pass. But so you participated? Does your family? I used to always take at least one of my kids with me. I don't know if you've done that yet. Yours maybe a little young, but
my oldest is 14, so she's just short of the ability.
No, but not being able to go. I mean, I used to take my kids. I got them out of school every year. Or every vote, I would take one. And I would let them. And hey, I mean, the people in our, I've lived here over 30 years. They love it. When you bring your kid in, and I would let my kids. When my kids were old enough, and I'm saying I used to take mine when they were in that second and third grade, when they understood. Hey, this is important. When Dad says you can't go in here and piss around, you can't piss around. So I took all my kids participated in the voting process at that point. So when they turned 18, all three of them, I took their first time to vote. We got them registered originally and all that. I mean, so in my family, voting is a pretty big deal. People say voting is right. I said it last night. I think it is the right, meaning. Yeah. It's important. So, but I'm just saying, I wasted a whole day already this week, and there's only been technically 3, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but all day yesterday I was involved in the voting and doing that. And then I had my show last night, but so I did not jot down many sports things. So I'll start with you. Is there any non-football sporting event that you paid attention to?
No, not really. I mean, it's football most of the time anyway.
I know. I guess the only thing is Kevin Harvick got caught cheating in NASCAR this week, and he would have been one of the 3 or 4 finalists in these last couple races.
I vaguely heard about that. So what went down with that? I didn't get all the details.
I don't know all the details other than it's always spoilers every time and I don't know if and that's why the word cheating, I think, always seems strong. They use that word today in the news. He had an illegal spoiler adjustment or something. So, okay. After he won the race and all that, long story short, he lost over 40 points and that bumps him out. Now he he can't win the championship now and all that, but it's NASCAR,
Yeah.
NASCAR, to me, I grew up NASCAR. Cheating wasn't cheating. NASCAR, you did that shit to win. Meaning, the whole point of NASCAR was modify your car to beat the other guys, and now they don't let them do anything to the car. The car, it's about the driver. It's all the cars have to be the same. We want the driver. I didn't mind when, cars win by 3 laps because it was the best car. I mean, now they all finish within 2 seconds of each other.
Right.
So I just know that was kind of some of the news. Right. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. And I think the word cheating gets used a lot sometimes in a negative word, but I'll use that in football. I mean, if you're coaching a team and you're a linesman coach, I mean, I've always heard, again, never played the line, but I've always heard that coaches, they're not teaching holding, but they're teaching holding. Does that make sense? And I've always said, so they say some of the better offensive lines really are holding all the time. So, is that cheating, or is that just saying, hey, you know what, that's a rule that we can take advantage of?
I think that's the rule that they're telling you can get away with, or because that especially with defensive coordinators, like, did you see so Julio Jones got into the end zone this past weekend? And but actually he had a play earlier in the game where he would have caught a long touchdown, but Josh Norman actually tackled him from behind in order to prevent the long bomb touchdown. And that is something that, it was an egregious, it almost like a horse collar tackle.
Right. It was blatant.
Yeah, it was blatant. But that is one of those plays where defensive coordinators, they will say that, yeah, they're more than willing to take the 15-yard penalty for pass interference than to give up the 6 points if you get beat like that.
Right.
So one of those things where, yeah, it's kind of part of the I don't want to say like, I think culture is the wrong word, but it is something that they will just let their players know that this is what they're willing to accept in order to win.
Right. I mean, and I get that. And, it's back to this quarterback thing when quarterbacks, where you get the 15-yard penalty for looking at them crazy and all that.
Yeah.
I have heard that, some defensive coaches are saying, you know what? Nah, I'm willing to maybe take that 15-yard penalty in the first quarter, meaning put some pressure on the guy. You know what? If you land on him there, and we get a 15-yard penalty, that's fine. But, let's don't be afraid of that penalty that, to let that quarterback know we're coming. So again, I don't personally think that's cheating, but it is. No, it's on that edge of, hey, you know what? If you're going to break the rule, let's do it in this manner. Which, like I said, us off the rails. So that being said, let's go all the way back since he got a job. I'm trying to think of all the guy back with the Saints. I don't know the coach's name. The one who got in trouble for the spearing money or the bounty money and all that, which I've always heard all the teams used to do that until that guy got caught. That's back to the same thing. Is a bounty or telling your guys to go out there and say, hey, if you go out there and make a hard, questionable call.
That was Greg Williams, the now head coach of the Browns.
That's what I was going with. I mean, that's what I'm saying. He's now in the news. And I knew I knew he was with the Browns. I just couldn't remember his name. So
Greg with 2 G's.
Yeah. So, I don't mind that. I mean, I get what they're saying to hurt the guy, and that was always the thing back then. You know what? If you just worded it different, meaning if you hit somebody, if you have the hardest hit on our team, when we go back and play a film on Monday, the hardest hit's going to get $500. Is that different than saying, you know what? I don't know. Is that still considered a bounty? I don't think they can do that either, but
no, because it was different with Bountygate because he was specifically telling the players to go for the head, to go for the knees. I mean, like, we're not just talking about hard hits. We're talking about like career ending, mentally damaging.
I don't remember when that was. I know what you're saying. And some of the players said that's what they thought he meant, but I don't think it ever came out that he specifically said that.
No, they had. I'm almost 90% sure that when the whole Bountygate, like, because Sean Payton, he wound up having to.
Right. He lost a year.
He lost a year, and everybody else. All the fallout was that players that were depositioned and whatever, they went on record saying that he was telling them to aim for those areas.
Okay.
And physically,
but again, really hurt them. Aiming for the head and aiming for the knees is not technically illegal. The key is that's dirty, and the key is if you're paying a guy.
This is illegal. That's how you get a flag. You get flagged for that now.
Okay, and that's my point. In the first quarter, are you willing to take that penalty in the first quarter to let Tom Brady know we're coming?
Well, if it's against a quarterback, I'm pretty sure you'll wind up with unsportsmanlike conduct and you'll get tossed.
Oh, geez. Return this into a pussy game.
I mean, am I wrong? I mean, at this point,
you're not wrong. But what I'm saying is, but are you willing to have your quarterback do that, or have the quarterback hit in that first quarter? Meaning, I'm not saying go for the head. I'm not even saying whatever. I'm saying don't pull up in the first quarter. I guess that's what I would, in my mind would tell my players, hey, I know they're penalizing us for this kind of stuff and blah, blah, blah. But at the beginning of this game, I don't want any of you guys holding back, worrying about that early on. Yeah, don't go for, what I'm saying? It's a hard, how do you word it? Don't go for the head.
Fine line to walk.
If you hit the head, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really fine line to walk. And as a coach, I would be hard pressed to try and have to explain to my players how they're supposed to walk that line without.
Don't the good players know, though?
I don't know. Some players don't. Some players really don't, because
they don't know to turn it off sometimes. But I'm guessing some of the better players. I mean, I would think have an idea. Hey, I might be able to get away with this in the first half and see how it goes. But yes, you can't do it in the third or fourth quarter with the game on the line. That's one of the things. And I don't even know how we got off on that tangent anyway. We are going to be talking a little bit about PPR scoring and scoring in general in the NFL and fantasy, a little playoff prep going on, but we do have multiple news, all kinds of stuff going on. Let's quickly get into some of the injuries. Again, here in Ohio, the big injury didn't even happen in a game, I guess, and that's AJ Green and this toe gate. Out possibly 2 to 3 weeks. And then I hear rumors now if the Bengals lose 2 or 3 of those games, he may not come back. What do you know? What do you think?
I think this sounds just like when he tore his hamstring 2 years ago. I think that's what's going to happen is that they're going to keep him on the active roster. They fall out of playoff contention here in the next few weeks. They shut him down in the middle of December.
Right. Which I agree. If you have AJ Green, you should have tried to move him this week, I feel, even if you have to take 75 cents on the dollar.
Because I mean, this week we already know he's not playing. So I don't think his value between, let's say, today, this Wednesday, and next Wednesday isn't really going to change all that much because Schefter's already come out and said he's going to miss at least 2 weeks. So I think like his sell window is from now until like the end of next week.
Well, I guess that's my point. I mean, I think it's more than 50% we don't see him again this year, in my opinion, based on the way the Bengals have done in the past. Yep. You know, me and you are from this area, so we pay attention to the Bengals.
Yeah, I remember this.
If they lose 2 of the next 3, you're not probably going to see him because I think, technically it just depends on what, Pittsburgh does. If Pittsburgh loses 2 out of 3 also, and we're still in it, obviously that changes things a little bit.
They're kind of trailing down right now. They've lost 2 straight, 3 straight. Right.
But let's say if someone came to me now that was, there's a lot of people stacked at running back, but if someone had Marlon Mack and offered him, AJ Green for that right now, I would probably do that right away. I mean, I wouldn't think twice, even if I was weak at running back, but I would think getting anything right now for Green would be a benefit. But again, what does it do fantasy-wise for other Bengals players? I've heard all kinds of things. I pretty much think it hurts everyone.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, it definitely hurts everyone because I do not think that there is any player on that team that can replace AJ Green's production, nor can they replace his presence on the field. I know a lot of folks are really hyped about Tyler Boyd. I don't see it yet.
No, I don't either. I think Tyler Boyd doesn't see anything. If anything, it hurts him because, they're going to double team him now. So obviously it's Ross and he has ability, he just hasn't shown it. Yeah. And he can take the top off the defense. So, I mean, that might help a little bit, but, you can't do that every play,
Yeah, that's if he stays healthy for more than 3 quarters at a time.
Right.
I mean, what do we really have to depend on here?
So you go all the way down. To me, then it hurts Dalton, obviously. To me, it hurts Joe Mixon because now you can, 5 in the box or 8 in the box. If anything, maybe if he's healthy, it helps Giovanni Bernard a little bit if they have to pass, if they maybe use both backs, in the backfield or, they're dumping off more because, I don't know. I think it hurts. If you have any of them in fantasy, you didn't want to hear AJ Green getting hurt. Luckily, I try to stay away from Bengals in fantasy. I love watching my Bengals and not having to think or worry about that. So I don't have.
I have AJ Green I have AJ Green in the Scott Fish Bowl and maybe two of my 6 seasonal leagues.
Right.
Because he came at a discount this year.
Right. I have Giovanni Bernard in a couple, and that's about it. And obviously I haven't played him for 4 or 5 weeks because of being hurt. But he's obviously not a mainstay in any of my teams. No. So obviously I won't start him the first game back or anything like that, but I'll see what happens. And, hopefully I don't have to start him. I mean, I only have him, as a backup, but, hate to see it.
Yeah.
The good thing was this week, there wasn't much injury issues. Am I missing anybody else? I mean, AJ Green was the big one. He didn't even play.
It was. I kind of saw this coming though, because at the end of the game before their bye, He was off the field for the last 3 minutes of the game, and they were working his toe out. He was seen in a walking boot after the game was over. So now it's, I mean, I'm not all that surprised at where we're at right now. No. I mean, it's great that he doesn't have to have surgery, but at the same time, I kind of see where this is going.
Well, back to my thing. He doesn't need surgery now. In 3 weeks, he may need it. So that's what we'll have to see.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what's going to happen.
A couple of, in my opinion, big things that happened this afternoon. And let me start with, I think fantasy-wise, the bigger of the two, and maybe you'll disagree with me. The Vikings claimed Amir Abdullah. I think that's bigger in a couple of ways than what's happening with Dez, because, I know Cook came back. I know, they already had Martavis, or no, who's the other running back they have there in Minnesota?
They have Rock Thomas. Latavius Murray. That's who I was thinking.
Yeah. And I was thinking back for him at his Raiders days. But I don't know. Amir Abdullah has had flashes of, so I just thought this was a unique thing. One, they're taking him from a team that's in their division, which to me is always unique just because obviously there's information there you get and all that. And if I'm not mistaken, I have to look at the thing. I don't know if those two I think they have at least one more game, but I thought earlier they might have 2 more games left against each other. I don't know if they played each other yet.
Yeah, they just played each other.
Oh, that's right. That was when they just did.
Yep.
Where Stafford got sacked a record high 10 times.
Yep. They've got one more.
Which again, another defense that scored a lot of points last week was the Vikings.
Yeah.
And a lot of people had dropped them. That was what was funny. A lot of people were,
defense, really?
Yeah. I saw 2 leagues where they were dropped because weren't they on bye the week before?
I didn't think so.
All right. Maybe I'm wrong because I almost picked them up and instead I went with the Chargers last week. But Amir Abdullah, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, they have running back options there, but if they decide Dalvin Cook is not 100%, I think Amir Abdullah could get into the mix.
I don't know if he's going to actually get into the mix at all this year. I mean, at the very least, maybe he might put Rock Thomas on notice in terms of if they need somebody to mix in on like 3rd down late in the game to salt the game away, that sort of thing. But I do think that after Dalvin Cook showed that he still has the speed, the cutting ability, and all that last week before ending their bye, that his hamstring is okay. It does seem like the rotation between Dalvin Cook and Latavius Murray is what they're going to go forward with. And I think the only way that Amir Abdullah makes any impact, because this is what he was doing in Detroit, is on special teams. Punt return.
I don't think Amir Abdullah is fantasy value. I just think it puts a little damper on Cook's necessarily. Do they do this if they think Dalvin Cook is 100% and definitely back?
Yeah, because they could still use a punt returner and a kick returner. And also, like you just mentioned beforehand, by taking somebody from a divisional rival, they can get some information about that team. So It's a win-win all around for the Vikings. They don't have to use them. They don't have to use him as a running back. They can use what they used in Detroit.
Right. The real Double A wants to know, are the Vikings, is their D back or are they overrated? I think technically a little bit of both. They were overrated because they got drafted high in most home leagues. But I always
all defenses are overrated, to be quite honest with you.
Well, I know, but their D hasn't been fantasy relevant much. But still, most analysts of defenses still thought they were one of the top defenses in the NFL.
Yeah.
So
I think that they've had some injuries because Xavier Rhodes was hobbling throughout most of that game, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. So, he wants to know if Lat Murray is done also. I think Lat Murray's done as being a number 1, maybe even a number 2. I think he has a little flex option there. Yeah. And you definitely can't cut him. And it definitely, if you have Dalvin Cook, you can't. I mean, you obviously have to keep him as your backup, but now that being said, when that's one of my things later when we're talking playoff prep, if I have Lat Murray and not Cooks, then I'm definitely going to try to trade him to the Cook guy right now if I could.
Because they're going
I would try to get something for him. Right. To me, now's the time to trade some of those guys if you have them. So,
I mean, I'm sure then we'll have this conversation here shortly, but now's the season for handcuffs.
Yeah.
So Latavius Murray would be the one.
I handcuffed today for one of mine, and we'll go there in a minute. So to me, that was the big news. So then I mentioned the other thing, and that's the Des Bryant signing. They talked about it all day. I've heard all kinds of things on all the live radio shows. I don't know. I told you before the show, I picked him up and traded him within 5 minutes today. Trading him for someone who has keeper value in my keeper league to a person who's a Saints lover. And I didn't even ask for the trade. It came to me immediately. So I'm sure he went to the waiver wire to pick him up and saw he was already gone. But me and you've had Des talk before. I have picked up Des 2 other times. Every time there was rumor, I picked up Des. And you make fun of me, but in home leagues, this is my point. I'm a home league player. In home leagues, names mean more than numbers sometimes. So I pick up those players thinking I can turn them for a lot more than their value. So, I kept picking up Des every time there was a tweet or news, hoping that, okay, if he gets signed somewhere, I'm turning him, and that's exactly what happened today. I ended up with Callaway and that has good keeper value for me. And I think Callaway's going to have more fantasy value than Des the rest of this year.
Yeah. I think there's a case to be made for that. But then at the same time, I like what you just did, or what we talked about earlier, in that you picked up a player with name value and you're able to flip him for something else, is something that all fantasy players should be doing anyway.
Oh, I agree. Right. I mean, and even not player value, just, it's back to, sell high and buy low. If you're not doing some of that in your league, it's a little hard. Sure. Dez is looking good now, ? Now, I did hear reports tonight on the NFL Network that somebody's reported that the Saints have said he's got, he needs to lose at least 10 pounds, and he's not obviously going to play for 12 days or whatever. I don't know when. He's not playing this week.
Yeah, they're not going to have him active for this week. At best, he'll be active for their Week 11 game, which I think is going to be back home. I forget who they're playing against, to be quite honest with you.
Again, I think he's going to have. I think his best week's going to be 35 yards and a touchdown. I just think that's probably his ceiling. But
they played Philadelphia in Week 12 or Week 11 rather.
Right. So I don't think he's going to be relevant. Now, people would say he's the number 2, maybe. I think that still to me is a little question, but most people are saying he's the number 2 in a very powerful offense that throws the ball.
Yes.
But not as much. I'm sorry. There's been 2 weeks now. One we threw the ball, one we ran the ball. So, let's talk about other players, though. How does this help anyone else in New Orleans, or does it really not change anything?
It doesn't change my thought process on any other guys. Michael Thomas is still going to get his. It might damper some of Traquan Smith's value because Traquan Smith he's still a rookie, 1, and 2, he was operating out of both the slot and on the outside. So if they move Dez back to where he was playing beforehand, like rotating between primarily on the outside and then also playing in the slot, that kind of dings up his value. But then the one player that I'd be completely out on would be Cam Meredith, because Cam Meredith was primarily playing the slot. So if they try and rotate Dez in as the wide receiver 3, move Traquan Smith to the slot, and then Dez plays on the outside opposite Michael Thomas, that completely removes Cam Meredith from the equation. So that would be the only player that I see being the odd man out, but everybody else should still be the same. Kamara should still be the same. Ingram will get mixed in. The offense still runs as it normally does.
All right. And I know Double A out there is saying that he's definitely a number 2. I still question that. I'm thinking everyone involved is hoping he's their number 2, but he hasn't played football in a long time, and he hasn't played real good football in even longer. So to just pencil him in as the number 2, I'm not willing to say that yet, and I'm not sure anyone knows yet. Does Dez equal Willie Snead? Willie Snead I think they're the same player. That's the problem. That's where Dez could be no different than Snead. 35 yards and a TD maybe.
Yeah.
So,
I think my issue, I guess, with saying that, not to say that that's wrong or a poor assumption, is that we can look into history and see how players that have signed onto teams like Mill this season and haven't fared well. I mean,
especially wide receivers,
because there's so much timing that they have to get on with the quarterback that takes months in order for them to look at. I mean, hell, if you look at the Browns right now. The Browns with Baker Mayfield and Jarvis Landry has been there like the entire offseason, but because Baker Mayfield wasn't the primary quarterback coming into the season, he didn't have the same amount of time to get his chemistry worked out with Jarvis Landry, and we see how that's working out with them. So it takes time. It takes time for quarterbacks to let their receivers know where they want them to be, how they want them to move, where they expect them to be at when they throw specific passes and they run specific routes. You can't expect that, especially, I mean, if we're talking about Baker Mayfield and Jarvis Landry not being on the same page, what do you think Drew Brees expects for his receivers? I mean, it has to be on a different level. Right. I mean, a completely different level.
I agree.
While I don't think that Dez Bryant can't rise to the occasion, it's going to take time. And I don't think it's going to be anything anytime soon. Right. I mean, at the very least, I would expect Dez to possibly make an impact by Week 13 when they go to Dallas to play play the Cowboys. And I think that'd be about the earliest.
I agree. And only because we're already on the team. I mean, in my notes, I just have Michael Thomas in all caps with a question mark. I mean,
he's a beast.
Everything they throw up, he catches. And I don't know. I mean, he literally at one point was over 90%. Catch total. And I think now he's about 85 or something. Somebody said, I mean, that's a phenomenal number, for you to be catching over 80% of balls thrown your direction. I mean, he just catches everything. And hey, I'll tell you, and I think we had the conversation a month or so ago. I don't consider it a mistake. I had 3 wide receivers at the turn in my main league, and I ended up going Odell Beckham. Why, man, I cannot. I'm gonna have to start smoking again. I can't remember anything. Keenan Allen and Michael Thomas. Those were my 3 options. And I obviously, and I passed on Michael Thomas only because last year they didn't pass as much. I'm not saying it was good or bad decision necessarily. I'm happy. I think Keenan Allen's going to really move on forward, and Odell's given me some decent weeks. But, obviously today I would put Michael Thomas above both of them based, obviously, looking backwards. I mean, I know that's easy to do, but next year, will he be the number 1 wide receiver off the board if everything stays the way it's going now?
No, not the first wide receiver. I think
who would be? Who's better than him right now?
Nobody's better than him right now.
Not number 1 overall. Not number 1 overall. The number 1 wide receiver taken.
No, I still don't think it's going to be the case.
You take Antonio Brown or Hopkins first?
I still think there will always be a case to be made for Antonio.
Evans went before him this year in most cases.
No, Evans going in like the back end of the second round. I never saw Michael Thomas going after Mike Evans. Right. I still think there's still a case for Julio Jones to go before him.
Oh, Julio Jones is who I'm thinking, not Evans. Okay, right. Julio.
Yeah, there's still a case for Odell, even
right, with Keenan Allen. I mean,
I would say they're at the same level. I'd say
Keenan Allen. Oh no, catch wise, right now Michael Thomas is showing him up. Keenan Allen, they say footwork. There's nobody better.
Yes, that's
Keenan Allen off of the line is it's the opposite. Michael Thomas is the beast at the end of the route, meaning he doesn't not miss the ball. But Keenan Allen off the line is just. I mean, they show it. I mean, there's cornerbacks and linebackers that just fall over.
I can't think of a week where there isn't a clip from the NFL or somebody like of Keenan leaving some guy tripping over his own ankles.
Right. And unfortunately, I've seen 2 of those where he was wide open and the ball just either showed up late. You know, I mean,
him and Rivers got some things to work out.
Well, the last couple years, they've definitely been better the second half of the season. So,
yep.
We'll see. Pretty big deal. The other thing that happened last week, Nick Mullins on the 49ers, that was our Thursday night game. What do you think of that third string guy coming in and playing quarterback?
Mullins, I actually wound up having to start him in a super flex league. And I was so upset because I was like, I had 2 quarterbacks on bye. My 3 quarterbacks were Kirk Cousins, Eli Manning, and Andy Dalton. So Eli and Andy were off on bye. So I wound up picking that guy up, and he got me over 20 points. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it's a hell of a story. I mean, for him to be the third string quarterback, come out and score and doing what he did.
We've had that conversation before. Was it he's that good, or back to the same thing I always say? They always look good when the other team could not prepare. Back to I've told you in the past, I've given you my opinion. These defensive coaches are so fine-tuned that these guys go in with a game plan, and a big major player change like this, which is why coaches don't want to give any information. I mean, it is so valuable to not let the defensive coordinators know what's going to happen. So, that's my point. Mullins could come back the next 2 games. And actually, I don't think there'll be a third game if he doesn't look good this game. But, if he looks good, he'll keep playing. But there's a chance that he looks just like I know he's not a rookie technically, or maybe he is technically, but it's not his first year as a professional football player.
Yeah, so, I think that game highlighted and cemented the fact that coaching matters in the NFL. Like this is where we need coaches like Kyle Shanahan, like Sean McVay, these innovative coaches that know how to scheme open their wide receivers and know how to put their quarterbacks in comfortable positions where they can succeed. Because I don't think that this same game would have happened if there had been a different person calling the shots, where you can have your third string quarterback come in and light up a team. I mean, I do agree with you that because it was against the Raiders and they're, obviously tanking. I don't think the same situation would have happened. They couldn't have done this to the New England Patriots.
Right.
They couldn't have done it to the Jaguars or good defense here.
If you watch the game, he wasn't doing anything. He was completing easy passes. I mean, they weren't giving him anything difficult. He was throwing to his first read.
Yeah, the first touchdown he threw to Pierre Garçon was wide open. The second touchdown he threw, that came off of Kittle running the ball like 80 some odd yards down to like the 15-yard line and then finishing off the drive by catching the touchdown.
Right.
So he was the product of just great passes, yards after the catch. That sort of thing. And players being schemed wide open. So that's good coaching. I would say he was the benefit of good coaching.
That's back to the Raiders. I'm assuming we know they're done. And is there any fantasy value at all now on that? Is there one yellow piece of corn on that cob?
No. You can't look at that team and see how they're operating and tell me that they're not tanking. They're
tanking, but I think the only viable player is, I think Doug Martin's playing for a future. He's playing to maybe stay on the team or at least get paid from somebody.
He might be, but he'll get games scripted out the second that they fall behind.
Well, that's true. And
it's going to happen.
Right. I'm not playing any of them. I don't have any.
I'm stuck with Jared Cook in a couple of leagues, and that looked great for like the first 3 to 4 games of the season. But past that, if you have other options, go ahead and throw them in, man.
Well, and even Cook is questionable. You don't know what you're going to get. He's proven that over the years.
Yeah, they've limited his snaps over the past couple of weeks anyway.
Right. The other news came out today that Buffalo has had to put some tickets on sale for $7. I know. I don't think they're tanking necessarily. I just think they're a bad team.
It's just sad.
I know. And Sam Darnold, the Jets quarterback, has maybe some major foot issues. I think it's foot, right?
Yeah, Arnold. Yeah,
today.
I've heard conflicting reports about that because I've heard some people say that he is going to be sitting this week, so that means Josh McCown is starting. I've heard other folks saying that he hasn't been completely ruled out yet, so I haven't heard definitively one way or the other on it.
Right, so we just have to wait and see.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I was just, the Rams New Orleans game. I mean, I think, if we don't talk a little bit about, that was a fun game to watch. Does that say that New Orleans is better than the Rams? Was it just the way it worked? What do you think? What
better than the Rams? I don't know. I mean, I think they were. Well, I would say this: the one play that I think changed that entire game. Did you watch it?
Mm-hmm.
The fake punt that the Rams tried, where I think that the punter got across the line.
I'm not going to argue that either. It sure seemed, but again, camera angles are.
I know. Just for me watching it at home, it looked like he had extended the ball past the line, and then they should have been able to. I think at that point, they would have been first and goal from like the 10, the 12, something
right.
like that.
I think it was around the 12 because that's where the replay was.
From there, and that would have changed the entire game.
Right.
So I think they didn't get a couple of calls that really changed the entire complexion of the game. So I don't think they're better. Marcus Peters from the Rams is a liability in their secondary, but everybody kind of knew that going in.
But for fantasy now, because I brought it up last week, was being careful of all these Rams offensive players and being able to play them maybe in week 16. Are counting on them. If this is their only loss now, and you brought up, if they're undefeated, they're going to play in week 16.
Mm-hmm. Now they have less.
Now with one loss and looking at their schedule, they don't have a tough schedule because they're in a pretty bad division. So, let's say now there is just one loss going into week 15, 16. And maybe we'll get into that a little bit, or maybe we'll just put that in. We'll start with our playoff prep. The problem is if they're not going to play, you're in trouble if you don't do anything until week 15 or 16. Because the problem is, most leagues trading deadlines are about to end here in the next week or so. Some maybe this week. The ability to trade any of those top Rams players, maybe to solve that problem, you're running out of time. And then obviously you have to go a few, more games than you want without those players. Or obviously you have to prepare for them not to be there. So you have to have good backups.
Right.
So, but my problem is with their wide receivers, that's almost impossible because there's 3 of them. So my thought would be if they decide not to play them as much, they're still going to rotate them in here and there. They're just not going to give any of them a full game. So you're not going to be able to not play them or just sit them because they have to play because there's 3 of them. So the key really comes down to Gurley and Goff. What do you start doing now to prepare for that possibility? Because I think right now them and Kansas City are the 2 teams you might have to worry about the most, right? I mean,
pretty much. It's them. It's Kansas City. It's LA. I mean, at the rate that New Orleans is going, the same.
New Orleans, but because all of them want to play for the home field advantage, so no one gives up until they gain actually the home field advantage.
Right. It's the same thing that we had to do with the Saints.
Some people think the Patriots don't care.
Yeah, that's the other thing. That's the other team. It's the Patriots that we really have to worry about every year of them resting their starters towards the end of the year. And especially the way that this year's going, if they're going to continue to win and they're shooting for the playoffs, I wouldn't expect to see Gronk doing much of anything here in the next couple of weeks with as many injuries that he's been dealing with over the past couple of weeks.
Right. Well, he's obviously a disappointment anyway. I mean, so far, he definitely hasn't given his value. So at this point, you're hoping that he has playoff you're only, if you have Gronk now and you are going to the playoffs, that's the problem. If you have Gronk and you draft him early, you may not even be going to the playoffs. But if you have Gronk, you're hoping you've gotten to this point and won, and you've got to the playoffs using other players, and then and he picks it up come the end of the and a lot of people think I own him in 2 leagues. And I'm doing well in both leagues, so I'm just hoping. I personally, I want him to sit this week and the bye week. I mean, just don't bring him out for 3 weeks. Let me have him for weeks, 13, 14, 15, and 16.
Yes, exactly. Because I do think that his value for those weeks, like while they are going to be the most important weeks, if the Patriots don't have any real need to keep him on the field, they're going to pull him. They'll pull him immediately.
I know it's tough.
I mean, that's where real life.
What about Gurley? What do you do about Gurley? If you have Gurley right now, and he, hey, he's number one. He's going to get you to the playoffs.
Yes,
but
I think Gurley's in a separate, in a different spot, and this is my reasoning for that. Is that so? Currently, if I'm not mistaken, Gurley is sitting at. How many yards does Gurley have?
I know what you're saying, but I don't think this coaching staff is going to play that tune.
Oh no, coaching staffs, and this is a real thing because I've heard Evan Silva talk about this, and I've heard a number of coaches talk about this. Is that they do care about records. So right now, Gurley has 868 rushing yards and only 362 receiving yards. Now he is on pace to, I mean, he's well on pace to get the 1,000 rushing yards, but he's on pace to get to at least 1,000 receiving yards. So the record for 1,000 receiving and 1,000 rushing is something that they would want him to have. So it's possible that if he continues on this pace, that they would still want to play him in weeks 14, 15, 16 to get him that record, because Bruce Arians wanted to get David Johnson that record 2 years ago when he was still playing.
I don't know. The Super Bowl means so much to a team, a community, and a player. I think most players would give up that record to get a Super Bowl. So I don't know. I see what you're saying. So you're saying if you have him right now, you're not doing any prep. You're not concerned. I don't even know. I don't own him anywhere. Who's the backup there?
Malcolm Brown, the other guy that scored the touchdown last week.
I do that. I have him flagged in a few leagues where maybe I pick him up to block the other guy, but I'm not ready. That to me, that's a step too early. I always like to get my handcuffs first, and then when you start dropping extra players, then sometimes I'll try to steal maybe the better team in the league. I'll try to steal their back a handcuff. Some people don't like that. I do it. And I'll play that game, but all right. So you don't do any play. I mean, was it 2 years ago? When did Zeke kill everybody? Where he had that. I think that was 2 seasons ago, where Zeke went off, and then week 16 came and they didn't play him, and that just killed everybody that got to the Super Bowl because they had him. And unfortunately, that was the year where they didn't even have a good handcuff necessarily.
I think they were still rocking. Was Alfred Morris still on the team then at that point? I think
that was Alfred Morris's first year, but I also think they had who was the guy? Their true backup was the one that had the broken arm because he ended up breaking his arm at the end of the season.
Yeah, I thought it was. Was McFadden still there?
Yeah, that was McFadden. So, I mean, that just killed you. I mean, unfortunately, this is a game. I mean, fantasy is a game where if you don't win the Super Bowl, it doesn't matter how good your season was. It's really like real football that way. So you have to prepare a little bit. I just think it's odd that I guess you would tell people if you have, Gurley to at least at a minimum get his handcuff, sure. but you're not trading him for, I don't know. I mean, I'm even trying to think. I haven't paid much of attention to because obviously you're not going to get another number one running back because that would be dumb. So you'd be trying to get maybe a top wide receiver and a second tier running back if you really still thought you had good playoff capability. But those are stupid things I do. I mean, I'm crazy
about it, but again, it's just like, I mean, what are you really trying to go after if you're going to try and break down the value of something?
I'm going for Super Bowl. I'm going to win the Super Bowl, and my goal would be, and okay, let's say I could trade him right now and get Odell Beckham and Marlon Mack. Let's say someone right now would say, I'll take Todd Gurley and give you Odell Beckham and Marlon Mack. I might take that, meaning I now have 2 players that I can start and might be enough for me to win a Super Bowl. I know what you're saying, and I'm saying it's too early. I wouldn't do that this week. But again, trade deadline ends in a couple weeks, and after the trade deadline, you have no options. I mean, you're only playing waiver wire at that point.
Right.
I'm just saying, to me, that is the kind of trade, if I had Gurley right now, I'd at least look at. I'm not saying, and sure, I might come back and say, oh, no, I need, I want Gordon. Give me Melvin Gordon and Odell Beckham, then I'll trade you. But then someone smart's not going to do that either. But I'm just saying, I know you got, experts always shake their head, never, won't do it. But, in home leagues, things can happen. There are probably some value. And the key to there, if Gurley's averaging, what is he averaging in most fantasy leagues, between 25 and 30 points?
Yeah. I mean, at least, between 15 and 20 points.
Where Odell Beckham and Mack could possibly get you 45. I mean, My point is, it's not, and especially if those 2 are playing. Now, the argument being neither of them may not have a reason to play either. That's the other issue. In week 16, sometimes you have teams that they're out of it so much that it's a whole nother story. So, it makes it a little bit harder to make some of those decisions. The Saints, the same way. I mean, it's a little harder there because, again, Ingram, I don't know. Would you rather have Ingram? Let's say, Kamara obviously has more value. What do you think is going to happen with Ingram moving forward?
With Ingram,
he's had some issues, obviously, since he's come back.
He's more or less, he is definitely at this point, he's Kamara's backup. Unless they're trying to slowly phase him back into, real NFL, taking more NFL snaps. It looks like at this point, he is Kamara's backup. It is completely different than last year where it was essentially a 50-50 split between the carries, the snaps, and also the passing and all that, and the receptions and the targets and all that. So it's much different than how it was last year.
Right.
Now they're trying to ramp him up into taking more and taking on a larger load, then that's fine. But at this point, if it continues the way that it is, Ingram's gone at the end of the year.
Right. Which is back to my thing. If New Orleans is committed and let's say they get home field advantage, I think at that point, Ingram in weeks 15 and 16 could go off, because they might say, all right, we're going to hold Kamara out. We have home field advantage.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So here's my trade I made today.
Let me have it.
All right. I traded away LaShawn McCoy, Kenyon Drake,
okay,
and Randall Cobb.
4.
I got John Brown and Mark Ingram.
Okay, that's a fair trade.
I think it's almost dead even trade. The key to it is all 5 of those players are on my bench, meaning the 3 I traded, I'm not playing, and I got 3 back that I don't or 2 back I don't have to play. But I think Brown and Ingram might have big week 13, 14, 15, scenarios maybe looking forward, and that's kind of why I made that deal. Because my starting running backs right now are Ezekiel Elliott, Marlon Mack, and I have Fournette in that league. And then my other 2 running backs, I have Rod Smith and I have TJ Yeldon. So I'm pretty much set at running back. I don't need Ingram at all.
Yeah.
But I didn't need Drake and I didn't need McCoy either. And I just figured on my bench, Ingram could be a bigger play for me.
He definitely has the higher upside. Because McCoy is going nowhere.
Right.
And Drake, unless Frank Gore decides he wants to retire.
Right.
Because I don't think he's going to break any other records.
Well, and he's still at that age where he could get hurt. That would be the biggest thing. If he would go down and miss 3 games, even Drake would have.
this was my thought process when Frank Gore signed on to Miami, was that because he was only, I think it was like 500 or 600 yards before jumping two more people on the all-time rushing leaderboard.
Right.
After he surpassed them, he would basically
retire. All right.
He would be done, and then he would just kind of phase on out and let Kenyon Drake take over. I think this was my like conspiracy theory, full on tinfoil hat.
I buy it. I mean, I buy it.
Yeah.
My point is, I think this was, and believe it or not, I'm in second place, and that trade was made to the first place player. So we both are going to playoffs. And the problem he had is he had no starting running backs. His team, he's only lost one game. He scores a lot of points. He's got but the issue he had is he's been running with Tariq Cohen, which has obviously been, a pretty good, he's not their starter technically, but he has had a lot of big weeks. And obviously he had Mark Ingram. So he had two running backs that neither one were technically the number one on their own team. And he really, and I don't think he plans on starting either of these running backs either, but the same thing, he if one of his guys would go down, he didn't have anybody that was, a real good pickup. And now he's got two running backs that have starting potential. So it was, I thought, a pretty equal trade. And it really helped.
On the upside, you definitely made out, like in terms of upside.
I agree. And that's the only reason I did it. Ingram gave me more upside than the other two. Yeah, that was it. He has Tariq Cohen, which has obviously paid off for him, and he's had James White. So two non-starting running backs have just paid off, dividends, and it's a PPR league.
Okay.
But you obviously have Sony Michel coming back, possibly. Who knows what the Bears are going to do. So I think he needed those two running backs. I mean, moving forward, because you couldn't trust Ingram either. So, all right, then let's continue then and just talk about prep, because to me that was a move I made to prep to win playoffs. Right now we're in week 10. Some people say it's a tad early yet. I'll start with handcuffs. I picked up Rod Smith this week because I have Zeke in a couple leagues. And I also made a trade to make sure I had TJ Yeldon because I have Fournette, which to me, either one can start and get you 15 or 20 points. If Fournette's healthy 100%, then you won't need TJ Yeldon and you'll be fine. But you can't. I think you have to have both of them. So handcuffing right now, I think this is the time. And like I said, trade deadlines, if you don't do this before trade deadlines, some of these you might not be able to get because someone already has them. But other than handcuffs, and hey, be careful. Make sure you get the right handcuff, and that's hard. And if you don't know the right handcuff, here's my argument on this. Maybe it's the wrong philosophy. If you don't know the right handcuff for the running back you have, then go take someone else's handcuff that you know for sure is the right handcuff. Because at least if something happens, you have a number one guy. You know what I'm saying? So if you don't know the backup or the handcuff for sure on your two running backs because they're not the strongest, but you can pick up Rod Smith, because if Zeke goes down, Rod Smith could be, by far could be a number one running back. So
I did this in one of my clients' leagues for because I do draft day consultants. So one of my clients, he has Kareem Hunt, and he's in either second or third place. And then the guy that he's tied with has Joe Mixon. So the guy that has Joe Mixon, he went out and got Spencer Ware. So I told my client to go get Gio Bernard. Go pick him up. If
that's right.
He went out and got your handcuff, then go get his handcuff.
Right. Because both of those players actually, now that if Bernard's healthy, they both have play value also.
Yeah.
So I agree. Now that seems like somebody might have picked up West. Do you think he really was blocking, or do you think someone thinks, hey, you know what, this guy's getting a little bit of playing and I don't have any depth. Maybe, I don't know.
It could have been 50-50. Because Spencer Ware, he's gotten some play over the last.
It goes another week or two. Do you offer Bernard? Do you want to make the trade and get your own handcuff at some point, or do you want to just?
In a couple of weeks, yeah, you could flip flop and see if you can just
See if the guy.
Yeah.
Would you make that move yourself, or would you say, you know what? No, I'm going to take my chances. I'm hoping your running back gets hurt, and I have all three of them. That's what I'm hoping for. That's the way I play. That to me is much.
That's actually what I would do. To be quite honest with you, is that I would just say like, no, I'm going to keep your handcuff and just hope that my guy stays healthy
and not yours,
Right,
because the other way, now it's still an even playing field, and I have to beat him. I mean, where I'd rather take my chances with, at 9-10 of hearts than an ace 7. I mean, I have a lot more options. Maybe I might not be in the lead right at the moment, but I have more options.
What makes more sense? Like if I have, so let's say if again, like I just explained, if you had Kareem Hunt and Gio Bernard, you could start both of those on your starting lineup and be okay with that. You would never start Kareem Hunt and Spencer Ware together.
Right. I agree.
That offers you more outs when you set your lineup.
I agree.
Carrying your own.
And also, obviously, the other issue there comes down to the rest of your thing. If you have a couple, back to what I just said, let's say you have a McCoy on your bench or, a Drake. A lot of number one teams have those guys on their bench, or something like that. Again, you could afford, if your number one guy got hurt, sure, you'd rather have his cuff, but I could still stick Drake in there, and hopefully week 14 and 15 and 16, he's playing and starting, So I agree with you. Especially if I'm strong at running back, I'm willing to even take that gamble even more. So, okay. Other than cuffs, what else? We kind of talked about looking ahead to schedule and looking ahead at teams. What other things should someone be looking at in week 10 to start preparing? Because, some playoffs, in the fish bowls, are you guys start playoffs in week 12 or 13?
Yeah, it's actually becomes a little bit earlier than that. I think Scott is supposed to be sending out the playoff pictures or whatever here, I think later on this week.
Right.
And I think the playoffs start in like week 11 or 12. One of the two. It's actually relatively early. I need to win out in order to get to the playoffs.
I got you. And unfortunately, though, most home leagues, that's not an issue. Most home leagues, you're not starting till week 13.
Yeah.
Most home leagues, I think ESPN, I don't know when is. I guess I don't know. What is ESPN's default trade deadline?
Oh, the default trade deadline, I think, is in a couple of weeks. It's like
21st or something like that. Or
before Thanksgiving. That sounds about right.
Okay. I just know in my league, our trade deadline is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, meaning once that thing, and that's just because we know that no one has to worry about what week it is. It's just like, if you haven't made a trade before Thanksgiving, you're not making one. So we just kind of do it that way as a way. It's just easier to remember, but
I'll some deals out then, see if I can make some more deals before the trade deadline.
What else are you doing to prepare? Obviously, if you're a playoff team, what do you think? In most leagues, 2 or 3 losses at this point means you're probably set for the playoffs.
Pretty much. I mean, I'm hard pressed to believe you're going to lose out if you've already
gotten that far, right?
Yeah.
Now, and I do that again because I'm crazy. I mean, I do go and look at the schedule. I want to know who I'm playing the next 3 weeks. I'm always 3 weeks ahead. And yes, I have a league where I'm definitely in the playoffs with 3 losses, and I happen to play 3 of the worst teams the last 3 games. So, I'm feeling good that, I can be making these moves like I did today and, start picking up handcuffs and not worry about bench anymore and some of that stuff.
Yeah, that's one thing that I would advise for folks, that if you do think if you're at 7-2, 6-3, you're pretty much a shoo-in for the playoffs. You should start not necessarily picking up depth, but just planning for the weeks ahead. So let's say, for instance, if you like to stream the tight end position, or you like to stream the defense, you like to stream defense and special.
Defense and tight end are the most common where you could start looking ahead.
Yeah. So go ahead and drop somebody off of your bench, pick up a defense that is going to have a decent matchup in week 13. That sort of thing. Same thing with tight end. You can use the same logic for tight end.
I'd agree. And that's my point. Don't look 2 games ahead, because that's not the playoffs. Start looking at week 13 and 14.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some people say, no, 14 is a waste of time. You have to win 13. So,
I mean, I understand that. But again, at the same time, it's like, okay, well, But if you know that your team is fairly strong, and you can look at the matchups and kind of see where you're
at. I'm not mistaken. I think someone already mentioned, and I could be wrong. It's one of the three. I think either the Jets play Buffalo and Miami, during the playoffs, or Miami plays, Buffalo. Those three teams all play each other that time frame, and all. Obviously, I think at that point the Jets is the best defense, at least so far. So if the Jets are playing Buffalo and Miami during the weeks 13 and 14 or 15, you might look into that, I guess. And you can just pick them up knowing you're going to leave them on your bench and not really even play them for a few weeks. But here's my other thing with that sometimes. If I know I'm guaranteed the playoffs, even if I lose maybe 2 of the next 4 or something like that, I'll just pick them up and play them now. Meaning a defense, the scoring matters a little bit, but how bad can it be? Even the Jets playing New England, probably you shouldn't lose that week if you're a pretty strong team anyway.
Right.
But, so if you're playing with short benches and let's say you only have 1 loss and you're playing with a short bench, I would truly look far enough ahead now to say, hey, let me see if I can just pick up a defense that can roll the table with it and not necessarily, let's say, darn, they play New Orleans in week, 12. You know what? If I lose 3 in a row and I need to win 12, I'll drop them then. But I'll pick them up now and go, all right, I'll roll with them. And because we've all seen it. Even you can't, defenses are predictable, but not. Yeah, I think you know what I mean. Even the week they play New Orleans, they could get you 5-10 points and not necessarily make you lose the week.
Well, that's true, but at least walking into that, you would know, or at least have an inclination as to how you think the game will go. Now, we never know how the game will turn out, but at least at the start, you could walk in and say, okay, hey, I'm pretty confident about this play.
Because the fun of fantasy sports, especially fantasy football, in my opinion, is, and I've seen it, once you make the playoffs, it doesn't matter anymore. Everyone is 0-0. And we all know there's enough variance that the number 8 seed or the number 6 seed, depending on how who gets in, can win it all, So the goal is just to get there. So you don't need to worry about being number 1. Now, hey, there are a few leagues that pay out money for some of that, how you seed and how you finish. Me and you were in that one league. I paid money out to first place for the league. So the guy that's in first wants to keep winning because that's half of Easy's money, So I'm playing that league too because I want to win. I think me and you were 1 game out of first. I think me and you were tied.
Well, I had to take down the guy that was in first in order to make that happen.
Yeah, and then I think he lost again. I think he's 7-2 or 7-2, and me and you are 6-3. I think.
Yeah. 6-3.
So I don't know. It's going to come down. Like I said, I'm playing for a lot more money than you two. So I'm playing to keep my cash.
Nothing. Well, actually, if anything, I'm playing for pride at this point because
I know, but
was giving shit. I'm playing for something.
I know. I've talked to one of them this morning. They're all crybabies, bunch of wussies. All right, we're running late like always. Any other playoff things that I haven't thought about? To me, because I think those are the main ones this far out.
Right.
Anything else you're looking to do?
No, I think we need to be aware of it. We need to, and if you're in that 6-3, 7-2 type of situation, those are the things that you need to start preparing for. Actually, right now, if you are in that 6-3, 7-2 type area, see if you can make some trades with some of the guys that are 4-5, 3-6, and see if you can sell some of your bench players or some of their fringe starters that you can hold that have solid schedules going forward.
Right, that's taking advantage. I mean, yes, that's preparing for the playoffs. Just make take advantage of the teams that have to win this week. And you take advantage by making your team better. Again, we've had that conversation multiple times. I'm not a screw anybody over kind of guy, but yes, I can wheel and deal a little better with somebody who has the pressure of having to win. If you don't have to win, then you have other options and I even take those options again. If I don't have to win and I know I'm in the playoffs, even with 2 or 3 losses, I'll start playing weird things like, I might not have the right defense yet, but I might drop my defense and pick up a defense that plays Monday night so that meaning I already know Monday I'm going to win or lose. I can drop that defense and maybe pick up somebody off waivers that might be available. I did that this week and I still won, but I knew I could afford to drop somebody because I picked up Scantling, who's I can't say the name, the Green Bay.
Scantling?
Yes. So that was a weird move. I dropped my defense, didn't play a defense this week, but I already knew I was going to win the match or the game or whatever. I knew I had the week 1. So I dropped my defense and picked him up because he was playing Monday night and was still out on waivers. So, I picked him up before the game. And then Geronimo Allison gets hurt. So,
now you have the Green Bay's wide receiver too.
Right. And to be honest, at this point, even if I might have lost that week, I was probably still guaranteed getting in the playoffs with a loss this week. And maybe having Scantling might be more important to my future than winning that game. Not saying I'm not one to give up a loss necessarily, but those are things you have to look at. If your record is 8-1 or 9-1, give yourself some outs on a Monday night or a Sunday night. Before the Sunday night game, even you might go, hey, my guy's played all his players and I'm already won, I've already won. So let me see what's out there, especially pretty much because they've moved that Sunday night game around. That Sunday night game from here on out is almost always going to have fantasy relevant players. So, you might be able to make up some late pickups and stuff that other people aren't doing. So, the last thing, which I don't know, we probably don't have enough time because I wanted to get into it a little more. So maybe we'll talk about it next week. There was just too much news. And that was getting into just fantasy scoring in general. It's just so up, it's so out of sight right now. Even in non-PPR leagues, the scoring is way up. So, the argument tonight was going to be, do we still really even need PPR? Is it making it a little harder? Like you said, because there's just so many options out there. Again, right now you can pick the number 3 wide receiver on a lot of teams and still, he's still going to get you 15 points or 12 points. And is that making it too easy for, random players where people like me and you who study more, what I'm saying? We'll talk about it later because I think I want to get into a little more than just you answering one question, but fantasy.
No, there's a lot that goes into it because I've heard. Well, I mean, we both listen to the same podcast, but actually, I heard Chris Harris and Denny Carter, who I work for with Draft Day Consultants. They actually had a similar debate on Harris's podcast just last night.
I saw him. Chris Harris talked about it last week. I thought last Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, he did with cousin Josh. On
okay, and that's where I heard it. But
and then he did it again with Denny last night on during the waiver show.
But I marked it down actually almost 2 weeks ago, and we just never got to it. And that's just because in my league right now, in my main league, 200 points, and you're still not the top leading scorer. We had one 304-point week this year. I mean, it's out of sight.
That's so much fun.
Well, that's the argument. Is it's fun versus skill, and what does it do? So I know I put that in the title, and I know people complain that, hey, you guys put something in the title and then you never talk about it.
Yeah. That'll be for next week because I think we can have a whole long conversation about that.
That's the problem. And unfortunately, right now with fantasy, so much stuff happened. These are the weeks where there's so much to talk about. Just and me and you aren't even that good at getting into the games coming up. We always just talk about what happened and a little bit of fantasy stuff. We very rarely ever talk about what's about to happen. But real quick, I think we got a fun Thursday night game. Let's just talk about that just real quick. Are you excited about this Thursday night game?
Yes, absolutely. Because I'm
definitely not rooting for Pittsburgh.
No. I mean, I am kind of sort of because one of my clients has Ben Roethlisberger, so I'm hoping he does well. But I'm heavily invested in Cam. So, I have Cam in a number of spots.
I'm heavily invested in my Bengals. Pittsburgh's going to have to lose a few games for us to.
Well, that's true. So that helps us out because
and unfortunately now with Green being out, it's going to hurt. We're going to struggle anyway.
Yeah, we need a loss then if we want.
This is definitely one of those Thursday games I'm looking forward to.
Without question. Because I think right now, if I'm not mistaken, so the line is currently set at 52 points, so that's good. Pittsburgh's favored, which isn't great, but still, I mean, 52 points. That means they're looking for a lot of scoring. So we're looking at something like what is that? With a 7-point spread, 52 points.
Right.
So it's like what a 28 or no, like at least like 25, at least 28 points is going to be scored like by each team somewhere around there.
Right. So that means the score should be like a 34-27 or
34-27,
31 or
So
we didn't even get into the Bell thing. I mean, that's was kind of big news this week. Him tweeting and all that. I still don't personally think I don't think they're going to play him. I think he's going to be he might be the most valuable handcuff.
Yeah.
I mean, if Pittsburgh wins out, I think I'd play Bell in week 15 and 16 and sit Connor if it was me and I'm going to the playoffs. So right now Bell might be the number one bitch. I thought about that. If I had Connor right now, I would definitely be hitting hard on the guy who has Bell. I was working deals yesterday all day long. I was trying to get both.
Both Connor and Bell.
Yeah. So I was working two different players, but I kept, I was telling them, they're like, well, offer me something. I said, no, let's see. I didn't want to put something out there and someone accept it because my concern was if one guy saw that I got Bell or Connor, it would be harder for me to make the other guy's deal. I was trying to get both of them to say, okay.
Right.
And then I said, all right, if you said, okay, yeah. And I said, and then trust me, I'd have lied. I said, all right, at 8:00, I'll get home. I'll send you something, meaning I'd have tried to do it to where they were both hitting accept about the same time. So, hey, that's me. I think that way, meaning I would, and then part of me, when the one fell through, I thought, well, okay, if I get the other one, then I'll try to trade him to that guy. Meaning I thought both of them, I wasn't trying to get either one as a piece for my own team. I just thought right now, if you have either one, they have trade value if you know what you're doing. And I really thought, Connor and Bell both have more value going to the guy who owns Connor and Bell. I mean, that's where you're going to get the most value. So I was hoping to get one or the other, but before I did that, I was trying to because I think right now, if you had both, you're sitting pretty for at least a number one run. That's not a bad number one running back to have going into the playoffs. I mean, so I was offering a little more than both of them. I really thought I offered Zeke Elliott and Sammy Watkins before we knew Sammy was hurt, I guess, for Connor.
Whoo, that's a good deal.
And he turned it down.
Wow.
Now, the big thing is, which again is you need the whole thing. Connor comes with a 14-round keeper value. I mean, Connor should be a number 1 or number 2 pick next year.
That I didn't know. Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So, yes, it is really a good deal. The problem is the guy who has Connor, he's kind of stuck. He only has 3 wins. He's convinced he's not going to make the playoffs, but he's not eliminated yet. So I was selling him on the point that, if Bell comes back, having Connor is going to almost make it to where you're not going to make the playoffs. Maybe not. But you know what I'm saying? I was selling him on that point where Zeke is going to play every week. Zeke is going to be the bell cow, So if you go on a run, he can't afford to lose again. So you know what? You're better off having Zeke for the next 8 weeks, than you are having Connor. So that was what I was selling him on because
I can get behind that. Okay.
I thought my team, same thing. I was hoping if I got Connor and not Bell, that Connor would at least be a number 1 equal to Zeke. He's actually better than Zeke so far this year, technically. But he does come with that, if Bell comes back, what happens thing. But I was deep enough. That's actually the team where I had McCoy, and I didn't make that trade yet. I still had McCoy. I had Drake. I had enough that if something happened to Connor and I didn't, and they didn't play him as much, I had a few other options. So I was willing to gamble that without Zeke. So, but I could not get him to budge. I'm pretty sure, and Connor to me was the part I wanted first. So I was trying to get that one done. And then the Bell guy, unfortunately, then that's when the Bell tweet came out where he said, bye Miami, or whatever. And he's like, oh no, I don't know. I think I'm going to wait a few more days. Meaning, he's hoping that he comes back, and coming back gives him more trade value. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's no commitment he's still going to play, but I do agree. Once he is signed and back with them, I think his trade value does go up a little bit. So
I'm with that. Yeah.
But that's the fun. I love trading. I've done so many trades this year and that's my main league. And I'm in second place, got a good, strong team. Mm-hmm. They all hate me because every time I make a trade, my team gets better and my team's already pretty damn good. Right now I'm starting Zeke and Fournette. I'll take Zeke and Fournette into the playoffs. Okay. And now I have Ingram as my backup. I have Odell Beckham. I have Keenan Allen. I have Sammy Watkins. I have Marvin Jones. I know no one cares about my team, but tight end's probably my weak spot. I have Aaron Rodgers. So my weak spot is my number 2 quarterback. Unfortunately, I lost Jameis Winston, so I had to start Dak Prescott this week, which he's not the worst number 2 quarterback to have. But that's what I'm stuck with right at the moment. And I have Trey Burton as my tight end. Still not the best, but not terrible.
Yeah, like I said, he'll get you, 4 or 5 targets.
Yeah, unfortunately, tight end anymore. If you don't have Kelsey or Ertz, the rest are all mishmash anyway. So
Kelsey, Ertz, and Kittle. That's all you need.
Yeah. Well, I don't have those 3, so I have to roll with Burton. Yeah. That's what I got. And Burton's that next tier down. He had a 35-point game this year already. He's had a couple touchdowns. So we'll see. All right, Chris, let's say goodnight. We already went way over. I hope you didn't have another show to do. You didn't tell me that. So
I was supposed to have one earlier this evening, so not a big deal.
Oh, all right. Hey, before we leave, point back. Let me see your little your award back there. I just saw it dangling back there. Wait, your camera angle's off now. What'd you do? You were there.
Yeah, I know. It's like, okay, so here we go, right there.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. The best beer. Are you brewing another one of those soon?
I actually have 2. I brewed a couple.
No, not. That one. Are you brewing that beer again yet?
No, that won't be until springtime again. Because that one, actually, the grain bill and all the fruit and stuff like that. I think that damn thing cost me $80.
Amen. Woo! That'd be a good Christmas present.
Hey, it was well worth the investment.
I drank one of your buddy's Moscatos tonight.
Oh yeah.
He made some wine and he brought me some, and I'm not a wine drinker, but I will drink Moscato here and there. It's grapefruit that gives you a buzz. Yeah. Not grapefruit, yeah, grape juice. It'll give you a little. I don't mind a sweet wine, so yeah. I polished a bottle off, so it was not bad. He doesn't like wine, but he just likes to make it once in a while, just to.
He makes it for Mary.
Yeah, I know. Mary, she's Mary thinks she's high snooty and a wine drinker. She's not.
He makes it for her.
Yeah, I know. Hey, it wasn't bad. I don't mind it. He made a dry wine too. I haven't tried that yet. That's not. That's not.
Oh, yeah, I've sampled a couple of those from him. That's not bad at all.
All right. I'll look forward to the dry wine. Chris, have a good time. Enjoy your week. I forgot to say, I forgot my advertisement. 9:00 tomorrow morning, Lenny Melnick will be talking baseball here on the network. I have shows on Tuesday night, the Roundtable, which is hysterical. We have a blast. Chris, you're welcome. I do send you the link. You never show up, but I do send it to you.
Always, yeah.
We had a blast last night. It was fun. That comes on at 10:00 on Tuesday night. Ease around the table, and then on Sundays with Lou Landers, I do the start sit thing. Lou's the expert, definitely there. I just bring all the sit start questions that I get and things that are going on, and we spend about a half hour, 45 minutes answering questions from the chat room on Sundays. So join that. And then Lou now does a football show every Tuesday morning, recapping all the games. That's at 9:00, and then all the other mornings at 9, Lenny's talking baseball. So come to LennyMelnickFantasySports.com, join the chat room, sign up. It's free. We got a lot more podcasts coming. So, just about any sport. I think they have the best, it starts next Tuesday before my Roundtable show, the best pucking podcast. If it's called the best pucking podcast, what do you think they'll be talking about?
I don't know.
Hockey. Oh, don't talk cricket. We have a cricket guy. We do. There is a cricket guy that brings them up. But no, the best. I think it is called the Best Pucking Podcast. And they're going to be. So we are going to have a fantasy hockey show on the network. So, that'll be kind of fun, I guess. Yeah. So, Chris, good luck this week. And I'll see you maybe Sunday if you want to show up.
All right. Will do.
Say goodnight.
This has been Just a Fantasy Fan podcast. And to keep your fantasies going, follow us at justafantasyfan.com. Say goodnight. Good night.